High above the Earth, a man in a white spacesuit is stuck. Alexei Leonov has just become the first human to float free in open space, and now he cannot get back inside his own ship. In the vacuum, his suit has swollen stiff as armor. His hands have pulled from the gloves, his feet from the boots, and the airlock he must climb through is barely a meter across. He does not fit. Below, the planet turns. Ahead, the edge of night races toward him. No one can help. It is the 18th of March 1965, and the first walk in space is about to become the first death in it. To understand how a man ends up trapped in the void, rewind a few hours. Just after 10 in the morning, Moscow time, Voskhod 2 climbs off its pad at Baikonur carrying 2 men. Pavel Belyayev, the commander, is 39. Alexei Leonov, the co-pilot, is 30. And Leonov is about to attempt something no human has ever tried, to open a hatch in orbit and climb out into open space. The Soviet Union is racing the United States to be first, and the whole plan hangs on one improvised piece of equipment. Voskod's cabin cannot be emptied of its air, because the electronics inside are cooled by it. So engineers have bolted a collapsible fabric airlock, nicknamed Volga, onto the outside of the ship, a cloth tube barely wide enough for one man that inflates once they reach orbit. Leonov will crawl out through that tube, and that flimsy tube is about to decide whether he lives. On the second orbit, Leonov seals himself inside the fabric airlock, and Belyayev lets the air hiss out of it until it matches the vacuum outside. The outer hatch swings open onto pure black. For a moment there is nothing but the drop, a fall with no bottom, in every direction at once. Then Leonov pushes off. Tied to the ship by a single umbilical cord just over 5 meters long, he floats out of the airlock and into open space, the first human being ever to leave a spacecraft and hang in the void with the whole planet turning beneath him. Down at Mission Control and on Soviet television, it looks like a flawless triumph, proof the Soviet Union has beaten America into the next frontier. Out here, for now, everything is going exactly to plan. For a few minutes, it is beautiful. Leonov turns slowly on the end of his tether, and the whole Earth wheels beneath his boots, the blue curve of the planet's edge, white cloud and cloud shadow, whole oceans sliding past without a sound. Above it, the sky is absolute black, and the stars there do not flicker. There is no wind. There is no noise at all but his own breathing inside the helmet. For 12 minutes, Alexei Leonov is the only living person who has ever seen the world like this. Not through a porthole, but from outside it, floating free above everything, held to his ship by one thin line. And it is the last easy moment he will have for 2 days. It starts in his hands. Leonov reaches for the ship, and his fingers no longer reach the ends of the gloves. His feet have slid up out of the boots. The Berkut suit itself has gone rigid around him, swelling outward like an overinflated tire, until he can barely bend his arms or his knees. This is the flaw no one caught on the ground. In the vacuum of space there is nothing pressing on the suit from the outside, so the pressure sealed inside has blown it up hard and stiff, turning the suit that let him float out here into a rigid balloon he is trapped inside. And a man who cannot bend his arms or his legs has a serious problem, because to get home he has to fold himself back through a hatch he can no longer bend into. Leonov pulls himself back to the airlock and stops. The balloon suit will not fit through. He cannot bend enough to climb in the way he trained, and the opening is far too small for a suit gone stiff. He is stuck in the mouth of his own spacecraft, the Earth turning below and the line of darkness sweeping toward him, and when night falls he will be working blind. There is one thing he can do, a contingency he had thought through before the flight, in case exactly this happened. He opens a valve and lets the oxygen bleed out of his own suit, cutting the pressure inside by nearly a third, deflating the one thing keeping him alive so it will bend. It drops him below the safe limit, a fall in pressure his body was never prepared for. The nitrogen in his blood can begin to fizz into bubbles. The bends, the condition that kills divers who surface too fast. He takes that risk over the airlock. And soft enough at last, he folds himself back inside. The airlock has done its job, so the crew blows it off the ship, and the moment it goes, a new danger creeps in. The hatch it leaves behind does not seal perfectly. The ship's automatic system reads the leak as thin air and does the only thing it knows, pumps in more oxygen and more until the cabin is flooded with it. A sealed capsule full of pure oxygen is a bomb waiting for a spark. One frayed wire, one hot electrical contact, and the whole cabin could flash into fire with 2 men strapped inside it and nowhere to go. The pressure climbs and climbs while Belyayev and Leonov can only watch the gauge and wait for it to stop. Coming home is supposed to be the easy part. The ship is built to turn itself the right way and fire its braking engine automatically, without the crew touching a thing. But on the orbit they are meant to come down. The automatic system that lines the ship up, the one that finds its bearings from the sun, simply fails. It does not orient the ship. The engine does not fire. The moment passes, and Voskhod 2 sails on around the planet, still in orbit, the two men inside now facing a decision no crew has ever had to make. If the automatics cannot bring them down, someone will have to fly the re-entry by hand. And no one, on any spaceflight, has ever done that. Pavel Belyayev takes control. To fire the engine in the right direction, he first has to aim the whole ship in the right direction, by eye. Lying across the seats, he looks down through a small optical sight in the floor, called the visor, lining its markings against the curve of the Earth to judge the ship's angle by hand. Leonov holds his commander in position so he will not drift while he aims. There is no computer flying this, and no ground control to do it for them, just one man, looking through a porthole, trying to point a spacecraft at a planet precisely enough to survive hitting the air. Belyayev holds the ship steady, waits for his moment, and fires the retro rocket himself, the first fully manual re-entry in the history of human spaceflight. Flying it by hand costs them time. Getting two men out of their seats to aim the ship throws off its balance, and the engine ends up firing about 46 seconds late. At orbital speed, 46 seconds is enormous. It means they will come down far downrange, well beyond where anyone is waiting. And the ship is still not done with them. After the engine burns, the descent capsule is supposed to cleanly separate from the equipment section behind it. It doesn't. A bundle of cables refuses to let go, and the two pieces stay tied together as they hit the top of the atmosphere. The joint craft begins to spin, faster and faster, whipping the men around inside until the cables burn through in the heat of re-entry, and the capsule swings free, steadies, and drops beneath its parachute. When the parachute opens, the two cosmonauts are drifting down over deep forest and heavy snow, far from anywhere. They land on the 19th of March in the Taiga of the Ural Mountains, hundreds of kilometers off target, roughly 400, in wild country north of the city of Perm. The capsule punches into the snow between the trees and stops. Belyayev and Leonov are alive. They have survived the void, the airlock, the fire hazard, and a re-entry no one had ever flown by hand. And now they are sitting in a scorched metal ball in a frozen wilderness in a Russian forest in March, the temperature dropping and the daylight going. A helicopter finds them within a few hours. But finding them and reaching them turn out to be two completely different things. The helicopter circles, but the forest is far too dense to land in, and the snow too deep to lift the men out through the trees. So the crew that survived space is left to survive Russia. Rescuers drop them warm clothing and supplies from the air, but the first night comes down hard. The temperature falls toward -25 degrees, and the two men shelter inside the cramped capsule, wrapping themselves in the fabric of their own parachute to keep from freezing. Outside in the dark, the taiga is wolf country, and it is the season when the animals are dangerous. The cosmonauts have a pistol from the survival kit, and they keep it within reach. The first two men to walk in space spend the night huddled in a metal ball, listening to the forest, waiting for the sun. The next day, a rescue party is dropped a short distance away and skis into the capsule through snow up to their chests. But even now, the crew cannot simply be lifted out. It is too dangerous to hoist them up to a helicopter hovering over the treetops. So everyone stays put and spends a second freezing night in the forest, cosmonauts and rescuers together, building a fire and a shelter under the pines. Only on the 21st of March, 2 days after they fell out of the sky, do Belyayev and Leonov strap on skis and travel some 9 kilometers through the taiga to a clearing wide enough for a helicopter to land. From there at last, they are flown out. The first spacewalk is finally over. Both men are alive. The Soviet Union told the world it had gone perfectly. A smiling cosmonaut floating in the sun, a flawless triumph. For years, just how close that flight came to catastrophe stayed hidden. But the real story of the first spacewalk is not a story about a perfect machine. It is a story about two men and everything that broke. A suit that trapped the first human in space outside his own ship, a guidance system that quit on the way home, a capsule that spun, and a landing that missed by the width of a country. Leonov and Belyayev did not survive because the technology worked. They survived because when it failed, one of them bled his own air to fold back through a hatch, and the other flew a spaceship home by eye. 11 weeks later, the Americans sent Ed White out to make their own first spacewalk, and his suit ballooned and fought him getting back in, exactly the same way. The flaw was never Soviet, it was the price of being first. One of the Americans racing them was a test pilot named Neil Armstrong. A year later, he would be locked in a spacecraft spinning fast enough to knock him unconscious, nearly lost in orbit. But that is a different flight and a different nightmare.